Hello, everyone. Welcome to CXO Spice. CXO Spice is a platform for thought leaders to share their point of view on innovation and explain how to make it happen in real world. Today's topic is smart merger and acquisition. Our special guest is Andy Champagne, SVP and CTO of Akamai Labs. Welcome to CXO Spice, Andy.
Hi, Helen. Thanks for having me. Fantastic to be here.
Wonderful to have you. So tell us more about your background and what led you to Akamai, and what does really Akamai Labs do?
Great, thanks. So today I'm in the CTO team at Akamai, and the CTO team at which Akamai Labs is a part of is really focused on trying to figure out the strategy for the next generation of the company and work on execution of the current generation of strategy as well. And, I've been at Akamai for a while now, over 20 years. And, my background is in technology and networking before that. And I'm one of these people, I'm a kind of, very technical person. So I want to figure out recursively how things work, which is, not just to understand at the surface, but understand what makes those things work and then what makes those things work below. And, Akamai in the very late 90s when it started, was a revolutionary concept, right? About how to go from a centralized manner of distribution where you just run bigger and bigger servers in single buildings to a notion of you can run and distribute the web in a distributed way. And that was just absolutely captivating to me. I'm a networking person kind of, and the notion of being able to do it smarter and more efficiently from the edge of the network was amazing. And it's been a great ride since. So it's been a long journey at Akamai, but it's taken all kinds of interesting places, and including what we're going to talk about today, which is a little bit about what we think our future has in play and how Linode plays into that.
Wonderful. They're certainly lucky to have you, Andy. It's hard to find someone who was with the company for 20 plus years and so knowledgeable. My core belief is growth happens at a crossroad of humanity and technology. Certainly growth by acquisition is the key business strategy. So I'm very excited about Akamai's recent acquisition of Linode because it was inspired by your customer. So what is the backstory of this merger?
Yeah, so the backstory of the challenge here really goes back to the very early 2000s, 2003, 2004. So Akamai has always been on this journey to figure out edge computing and to figure out how we enable customers to run technology at the very edge of the network, and J2EE and enterprise Java, and has progressed. And when we had over the years, as we've had customers who have had more and more desire for capabilities, we've really extended what our offerings were. And with Linode and with the inspiration here was really the notion that customers just want to run their compute at the edge. And they want to run that compute at the edge in an abstract and easily addressable way, meaning they don't necessarily want to have to change from one language to another. They want to be able to use the compute unit that they're using and simply deploy that on our network. And that was the key part where we have several, very large, very strategic customers to us that were really pushing us and working with us on how to run code and capabilities globally in a distributed way. And we have internal capabilities for that. But when we looked at Linode, we saw a distinct opportunity to take what we had in our global platform and then take Linode and their amazing company that they've built and their technology and really bring them together in an interesting way.
Well, you made it sound so easy. I know it's not as easy as really, and when you really get to the reality. As your CEO, Tom Layton, said, Akamai is expanding from delivering and securing applications to empowering developers to build on it, right? And Linode enables us to create the world's most distributed compute platform. So how will this vision unravel, and what's on your roadmap in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, so a lot there. I'll unpack that a little bit, which is, first of all, our vision is that compute becomes a continuum, and meaning that the compute is going to happen depending upon the kind of workload and where it is and where a user is. Today, you've got, folks doing most of the compute in a dozen very large data centers, maybe 24 very large data centers. And Akamai's vision is that's great. But we've shown that delivery, meaning if you're actually moving content, that makes sense to do from hundreds of locations. And compute similarly has a corollary story where doing compute from hundreds of locations, or in some cases, thousands of locations, makes a ton of sense. And we're on a journey to help put both the plumbing and the developer interface together to execute on that. And, Akamai's, kind of global network of over 300,000 servers gives us kind of the basis to do that. Our fabric that interconnects all those together gives us kind of the plumbing and the backbone to do it. And then on top of that is the notion of how do we build out the interface and tools to enable customers to do that. And one of the things, as we look at Linode was just the sheer simplicity and the ability to quickly execute and deliver on a virtualized capability through a few clicks is highly compelling. And taking that and combining that with Akamai's breadth and width of deployment is what we're really excited about. So if we think about timeline and roadmap, so this year, frankly, we've spent the year basically doubling up on Linode's infrastructure, which is we've seen a lot of interest, both from Akamai moving our own applications onto Linode, because Akamai is going to run on top of Linode as well, and then having obviously early customer interest. So we have been kind of growing and expanding Linode materially based upon the interest and demand that we've seen. And then over the next couple of years, it is pushing that out into the distributed portion of our network. So starting to capture that journey of having a gradient of compute, which means you might be running your data lake in a centralized manner, maybe in one of the centralized Linode data centers. But as you have portions of your application that are relevant to users, those portions of the application should be pulled further and further out into Akamai's network so that the performance increases as it gets closer to the user. And, again, that sounds easy. The developer integration and the data integration behind that is really hard. And we're really lucky to have folks like Linode joining us to help solve that problem. Of course, with all the great folks we've got at Akamai already.
Wow, that's impressive, right? It's going to have a massive impact. I actually have gone through many merger acquisitions myself, right, through my Oracle days and Adobe and Marketo days. So I, was very pleased when I was asked to share my 3 observations on Linode acquisition in an article recently. Let's unpack them one by one. I'd love to hear about your opinion, right? My observation number 1 is when the company complements your existing footprint, you can really serve customers in a more meaningful way. So tell us how important this is, and if you have already seen the positive impact with Linode acquisition.
Yeah, that's a great observation. I think when we were working on kind of the thesis around Linode, there was a distinct realization that this was a very kind of yin and yang combination. And the notion there is, Linode is not in the business that we're in, and we're not necessarily in the business Linode is in. So there was a great, and we looked at the respective strengths of the organizations. Akamai about distribution, Linode about simplicity, interface, and compute. It was incredibly synergistic from that perspective. So in this acquisition, we do not have those kinds of those corporate conflicts or this notion of, we need to, integrate their function that does X with our function that does X, meaning service functions. We didn't have overlapping services. So we didn't get into that very, terrible, which one wins internally corporate, because the good answer is it all wins. And, we're basically taking everything that Linode has and we're pulling it into the fold of what we're doing, and we're kind of scaling it up and doing it in a more distributed way. So I think that from our perspective, this one is an easy one to answer, because we've seen, just the notion that there's no conflict in our product offerings. Mm-hmm. And overall, our customers are excited to hear that we're getting into this space. We have a great track record on helping customers with security capabilities, with delivery capabilities, and now we can have discussions about helping them with their cloud compute capabilities. And that is a really unique and privileged position to be in with our awesome customers. And it's been great so far. So I think that's a great observation. This one is pretty easy because it's a nice yin and yang type combination in that regard. And
some of the concerns around the acquisition, Linode, is that, hey, now you're part of Akamai. Would you start ignoring the small size of business, SMB or mid-market? And any reaction to that?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And it would be potentially easy to kind of come up in a construct where Akamai, the giant, the security delivery company, might accidentally steamroll this. But I'll actually say the opposite is true, which is that is very much the spirit that we're looking to capture. And, one of the other interesting things here is many people at Akamai are personally Linode customers, myself included. So I've been a customer there for 13 years. So long before, we talked about acquiring them. So ultimately here, I think small customers grow into big customers over time.
Yeah.
And we are really committed to giving folks an easy, simple way to experience our cloud offerings via Linode and into our distributed network, but also our security and delivery offerings via Linode. So we see, again, this is very, very nice combination, yin and yang, however you want to frame it, where ultimately the simplicity of Linode gives us an on-ramp for small, medium businesses, or candidly, for startups in someone's garage or apartment, where they're looking for an easy way to do compute. So it is essential that we keep the minimal friction capability that Linode has and the catering to small and medium business. If you want to sign up for Linode and spend $10 a month, we absolutely want that. And because ultimately you might have a great capability that can then build and grow on our network. And over time, more of Akamai's service portfolio is going to be relevant to you if your startup eventually turns into a web scale company. And we've seen that happen, obviously, time and time again over the last 20 years. And I don't think we're done with having new innovative companies. And we want to help have a framework where they can launch and grow to fruition all inside our platform.
Great to hear. Thank you. And my observation number 2 is align your culture, vision, and value proposition is really critical, because those people performing the work for a company are not the deal makers sitting on the table for the merger acquisition. Oftentimes, there's a lot of emotion and uncertainty trickling down, right? And when two companies walk to the altar, how have you managed this with Linode acquisition so far?
Yeah, this is always a tough question, because when you are, I have to imagine, right, when you're a small company getting acquired, and my only experience here predates Akamai, right? But like when you're a small company getting acquired, like, it's easy, frankly, bad things can happen to the culture that's being acquired. But, in this case, Akamai's desire is really not to change what they're doing, right? The notion of how they're doing it and what they've done, and again, the simplicity, and I'm probably overusing that word, is key to our success. Secondly, if we look at what we've done, we're not coming in and trying to say, hey, we want to take your business, we're going to tell you how to do it more efficiently. What we do want to help is we want to help you scale it up. And that has been really our playbook, which is to help scale up and, introducing multiples of demand from what they've seen previously. And, the people question is a tough one. And communications inside companies, especially, post-COVID, where things tend to be a bit more virtual rather than in person, is always a challenge. But we've, the Linode folks are still in Philadelphia working away, still got their own offices, being integrated a bit into the Akamai ecosystem, but still maintaining that kind of same passion that they've had around their work and of their brand. So ultimately, it'll take a little time, but Linode and Akamai are both awesome cultures, and the goal is to not delete or squash one, but really combine them for the future.
So let me make sure I heard you right? You did not lay off anybody post-acquisition, correct?
Yeah, this was not a acquisition about, we're not coming in here with a private equity mindset, right? If we're coming in and we're gonna take out 50% of the team. This is, we bought of course we bought the business, but we bought the people, and that was just essential. So, I think the Linode staff, their challenge is hiring fast enough. So based upon the extra resourcing that we're adding in.
It's so refreshing to hear that, Andy. Thank you. And, my observation number 3 is to build out essential creative communities, right? There are many different stakeholders in the company's ecosystem. We often talk about employees and customers, but there are others like community members, referral partners, supply chain partners, educators, or industry associations, among others. How has Linode acquisition enriched Akamai's community?
Yeah, I think this is a case where the more people that I meet from Linode, and there's still some I haven't met, so as I meet new folks, they've got folks who are really passionate about what they do, and they bring with them, to your point, a web of connections out into the community. And whether that's people they work with from a marketing perspective, whether it is suppliers, whether it is vendors, whether it is folks in the open source or Linux community, they have just a really rich web of connections. And our point is to look for, or our goal is to look for where those are common and kind of leverage them. And one example of something Linode and Akamai both have in common is we're both, deeply open source driven companies. We're both companies that have really leveraged and come from open source technology, that contribute those back, to contribute to open source organizations. And that's one that I think we're finding a lot of commonality around. As we want to take approaches with new technology, we're having discussions, which is like, hey, we could do this and we could just open source it and enable our customers to use it for free. And I think that's going to be an interesting part of our value proposition going forward, which is to say that, Akamai and Linode together as Akamai are not just providing a service, but also providing kind of a community of software around that and helping to support that further. And that's been a incredibly important area for Akamai over the last 20 years, as well as Linode. So that is one example where I think our engagement with the community has been up and is quite exciting.
I love what you just said, community of software, right? And then do you have a customer success story where you joined effort to drive that success?
We do. We have a couple early wins, and I don't think we're naming them, so I don't want to spill the. I won't spill the bit. Sorry for the CXO spice, not spilling the beans. But we've had a couple really great initial successes. So we've had a couple very exciting deals close where customers are seeing the value of distribution and of the combination of what Linode and Akamai have, and then even more so, we're seeing a lot of customers excited to talk to us, right? Which is we're getting more and more meetings, more and more engagements. Simply because the value proposition, first of all, like Akamai's existing relationship and brand with these customers, additive with the Linode technology and people and kind of culture coming into the portfolio, and then explaining to customers, as we've talked about here, with where we're going with the technology. And that message has really resonated well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention that in that, highly compelling technical delivery, we also have an incredibly compelling argument around cost. Meaning that it's a very efficient solution. It's a very dollar-wise, pound-wise solution compared to other cloud providers. And, that's a benefit really of Akamai being a business that runs at web scale already. So we have those kinds of efficiencies of margin that we can bring to the compute business with Linode. So it's really been a kind of full court press when we talk to customers, and the story has been awesome. So I'm sorry, I won't spill names here, but we do have some exciting wins that I think you'll be hearing about over the next months.
Yeah, I would love to get you back to the CXO space to share more next time when we chat. So when it comes to live online, Web3 apps, metaverse experiences, and token-based economies backed by blockchain are top of mind. What is Akamai's take on this, and what's next for Akamai?
Oh, cool question. So a lot we could have a whole podcast just about those things. I think, first of all, innovation on the web is not done. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I'd start with, which is I think the state that we find ourselves in today is the current instantiation and is likely relatively temporary in the grand arc of the evolution of the internet. If you looked at the internet today and you went back 20 years in a time machine, it would be amazing. The fact that we're, here talking live over video, that would be amazing. And I think if you project 20 years into the future, I think we're probably going to see a continued rate of change like that. And, there's things changing like Moore's Law, et cetera, but the creativity of people and the passion of people to drive change, I think is unrelenting. So I think specifically Web3 and blockchain, represent a really interesting take on how you can have things that are distributed, but not necessarily under a single organization's control at the highest level. And that's a really interesting prospect when we look at what we do. With Akamai, which is, runs a highly distributed network. So that is one we're watching closely. We've done some work in blockchain with experimentation under labs, and we've built some technology there. And it's very interesting. It is an amazing, kind of back-end capability when we look at it. And when I say back-end, meaning that it's not addressable by the average person. Mm-hmm. Right. And we have to work on figuring out how the average person, how this might empower and impact them. And I think that's what we're still trying to solve aggregately, just in the technology community. So there's a lot there. Metaverse is going to be interesting. I think the verdict is still out on if folks buy into it. But I would say that it's got a chance. The modality that we're using right now is not necessarily the peak modality for engagement. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with all of those things. But the general message, which is change is constant. And I think that the landscape that we have today on the internet will evolve over time. Some big players are probably going to be constant, but they'll probably, 5-10 years out, there'll probably be a company that we don't know of today that is a big part of our life and is driving a big part of our online experiences. And, our goal at Akamai, frankly, is to figure out who that is and help power them and help embrace all of the folks who are working on being those folks. And, just overall try to keep it going. But I think, Helen, there's probably more change in the future rather than less.
Yeah, that's for sure. And that's really profound what you just said there. Regardless of who the new players or old players are there, I think Akamai will always play a role there. So thank you for joining us today, Andy. And I can talk to you for a few more hours. Unfortunately, our time is up here. So my biggest takeaway from our conversation is that with Linode, Akamai will create several 1 + 1 = 3 value propositions. Number one is a better solution for developers and businesses. Number two, a more attractive cloud infrastructure and platform service. And number three, it is the most distributed cloud to edge compute platform in the world. So thank you for leaders like you and Akamai for continuous innovation. And this smart merger acquisition brings proximity, more network, more secure, and scale together to power and protect our life online for billions of people, billions of times a day. So thank you for doing that. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Stay hungry, stay bold, and stay grateful.